Thanks, everybody, for having us back again. We feel that this story needs to be told by many, or too many, and it continues every day. We are far from done, and so we're here just kind of as an update to where the last year has. But we're going to introduce the kids. This is a signature thing, I guess, ever since we were in D.C. back in 25, so I'll start here.
My name is Lyle Maude.
My name is Kennedy Maude.
My name is Heather Maude.
They just get the biggest kick out of that. They just, ever since they were up there in D.C. at the stage when we had our charges dropped. But if you guys don't know us, we're Charles and Heather Maude. We live about 35 miles southeast of town, down on the Cheyenne River in eastern Custer County, I guess central Pennington County. And we were indicted on federal theft of government property charges back in 2024, and it all started in March with officers showing up at our door and saying that we might have had some issues. And so we invited them into our house, and we had a good conversation that day and found out really what was going on. And things degraded from there because we found some trespassing going on and some things that had been going on for months in advance before we ever knew about it. And by the 20th of June of 24, we were indicted, went through all the court proceedings, all the court hearings, things like that. In July of 24, we were both felons. We each had 4 counts, or we were charged felons, I guess. But we were charged with 4 counts. Some we still don't even understand. 4 counts of felons, and then $250,000 fines apiece and 10 years in prison was what we were looking at. And so we continued through 24 and into the spring of 25, just doing what we can with trying to reach out to senators, anyone that would help us to get the word out and to try to change what was going on. We had lots and lots of organizations, this one included, that was behind us, and we do thank every one of you for that. But then we finally gathered the attention of Secretary Rollins in late April. Last day of, or 29th of April is when she dropped the charges, and it's been an experience ever since then, but we finally was able to work through the process that they should have used originally through the Small Tracts Act. In October, we finally got some papers signed, and we officially owned it in December of last year, the piece of land that caused the problem. And I'll turn it over to Heather, and she'll kind of take it from there.
We've still had quite a bit that has happened since purchasing the land, so I'm just going to kind of roll through what happened this year, and I wrote it all down so I didn't screw it up. February 10th through the 14th of 2026, we were invited to D.C. for a lawfare roundtable by Secretary Rollins, and she had ourselves and other people that are facing issues of lawfare out there, and just went over. She officially classified ours as an act of lawfare there, and had a great trip, learned a lot. But during that trip, we had some great conversations with her and others. And one thing was, she asked me the status of the employees of the U.S. Forest Service that had done this. And I said, I have no idea, ma'am. I can't get any answers. And she said, well, I ordered them fired, so if you hear otherwise, let me know. I said, all right. And she asked me, have you been compensated for any of the costs you incurred in this process? And I said, no, we have not. And she said, send me a bill. And then we also discussed the concerns that we have about retaliation from a future administration. And we worked on some ideas on how to best address that to just reduce that as much as possible. So we left DC on February 14th pretty hopeful, and I went right to work on that. Spent a lot of work initially on the employees and got shuffled around from USDA to US Forest Service to different people, just trying to figure out that answer. Was that answer there? I spoke with Senator Round's office, just lots of different people on that. March 27th, we went back to DC, and we had requested a meeting to kind of go over some of this stuff, and we weren't able to get that done on that trip. And so I'm continuing to make calls. We're continuing to work on this. April 15th comes along and my phone completely blows up. And this is speculation on my part, but I'm guessing the Custer Forest Service office had their sign-up days. And everybody went in there and found the ranger from our situation in the range department in there working. And I remember sitting in Rapid City. I believe I was coming home from my butcher shop for a solid 2 hours as people called me asking, did the USDA lie? They said they took care of this. We did not expect to see this person in this position when we went in to sign up. The questions I got is, Secretary Rollins just a figurehead? Will you join us in a civil rights lawsuit? Why hasn't there been a third-party investigation? And why did the USDA lie to all of us? And why were we told this was taken care of and now she is there in an adjoining forest to where she was before? So at this point, I'm pretty frustrated because I've been working on this since about February 15th. So I wrote a letter to Secretary Rollins and Chief Schultz and reiterated what everybody, probably some of you in this room, called and asked me about. And got a response, got a weekend phone call from some people at the USDA to go over that. And come to find out, firing federal employees makes getting rid of teachers with tenure a walk in the park. Long story short. But I was at that point then kind of looped into what was going on. So at that point, we find out that they're both still employed. To my knowledge, they're both still employed today. And we did explain that our next door neighbor, Frank Bloom, does have allotments in the Black Hills National Forest. And so we still have direct contact between some of the employees involved in our situation and some of the people that were facing potential similar charges to us. So, but that kind of wrapped up the employee part. I had my answer. From there, I kind of looped around into the bill. And also, the whole time we've been working on these little things to reduce the retaliation component of it. But I went to work on the bill. By June 22nd, I had sent a rough draft of the bill and requested a meeting. I got follow-up within about a week saying that to submit a bill requires justification. And I responded, well, the secretary requested this bill from me, so I think you should ask her for the justification. Meanwhile, we were back in DC on June 24th through the 27th, and we requested a meeting to go over this stuff there, and we were told, you bet. And then once we got out there, nothing happened. And everybody was busy, and we were unable to meet with anybody on that. So on July 8th, I sent an email with an official request and a bill attached, and didn't really get anywhere on that either. Was told I needed to find justification and there really was no mechanism to do this. And I just kept coming back to, this was requested of me. And I've spent a lot of time on this, so I don't know about the justification component, and I don't really feel like it's my responsibility when it was requested of me to provide it. But I kept working on that. By July 14th, I was having a conversation with another couple that had been out here for some of the same things in February, and they said, we have people that call us, we have communication, but there's been no action and we just can't get anywhere. And we are just wondering if you would have a way to send that on to John Rich. And I said, oh, well, yeah, I do. And now that you mention it, we kind of have the same thing. We have some great conversations, but we just can't seem to get anywhere since February, and there were all these things. So I emailed John Rich. They email me. I forward that to John Rich and say, we're having the same issue. Like, we have some great people we've talked to. We get communication, but we're just really struggling with action, and particularly the things that we talked about in February. And within about 5 minutes of hitting send, I got a call from USDA, and we had an interesting conversation about me complaining. Yep. And It was about a 25-minute conversation, and they were pretty frustrated with me for doing what I did, and I said, well, I am not frustrated at any one person at USDA, but I'm really frustrated to be 6 months down the road on these tasks that I was given in February, and to have spent all the time that I have spent on them and to be no further ahead than I am, and to have flown my family to DC on our dime. We pay for everything when we go to DC. The government does not cover any of that. 3 times requesting meetings, and none of that happens. So that resulted in a lot of action in the last week. Spoke with Chief Schultz, and every time I speak with Secretary Rollins and Chief Schultz, they do such a great job. They have their ducks in a row, and you make quite a bit of headway when you speak with them. But I spoke with him, and we continued in on some of the retaliation stuff, and spoke with some attorneys at USDA to go over some of the ways in which we could justify the bill we had sent, and if there were any options that would allow them to pay us. And then yesterday morning, we had a meeting to go over that, and the end result was that there is no mechanism, nor is there a pot of money at USDA to pay people like this. And it would be on Charles and I to get an attorney and file a torts claim if we wanted to attempt to get paid back for something that was requested of me to submit. So I was frustrated after that meeting, but that is where we are at. So we now get to decide if we want to find an attorney and pursue a Torts Claim Act. The staff did also say, please loop around and follow up with Secretary Rollins if you are frustrated, and I will, and just explain we don't quite understand the request to submit a bill resulting in this. And like I said, she has been wonderful to work with every time we've worked with her directly. So hopefully we have some additional information. But that has been the last 6 months. So today, just to kind of reiterate, we've purchased the 2 small government lots where the fish fence issue was occurring via the Small Tracts Act. All involved U.S. Forest Service employees remain employed. And our avenue that we determined yesterday to potentially recoup costs is the Federal Torts Claim Act, in which we hire an attorney and incur all the costs up to the point that they either accept or deny what we are asking for. So, in general, the alarming things with this, and back to, this isn't any one person. I don't have a problem with any one person at the USDA, but the issue with the federal government as a whole in these situations is there needs to be accountability. And we've been working really hard on that for the last year with a lot of agreement from this administration. After all, they were elected largely on this. We fall right into a large portion of what the Trump administration was elected to do. So a lack of government accountability and a lack of justice for the citizen is our concern at this point. And I think we have some really good people to work with, but you just get weighted down in the bureaucracy of it, and you keep being handed tasks and kind of kicked down the road until you become frustrated enough that you reach out to the top, and then you seem to make some headway. So we're going to continue working on it, and we will make our determination, but we need actionable change. And that is one thing I would, if we do, anybody gets in front of the government, that's one thing all of us that were there in February at this lawfare roundtable, and I talk to multiple people a week on these issues, is the Trump administration was elected because they said we're going to dig these bad trees out by the roots and we're going to replace them with good trees. And it feels more like we're doing some decorative trimming. And that isn't going to result in the long-term change that they want and that we elected them to produce. And so I would just encourage everyone when you talk to them to make sure that they're aware of what you need, and if these things that are happening, these memorandums of understanding and these press conferences are sufficient, or if we need some more action. And we're going to continue to do that too. So that is where we're at. And on a little bit of a more potentially positive side, I do want to point out that they rolled out their USDA Lawfare portal when we were out there in February. And about 2 weeks ago, Frank Guzman, he spoke here last year, and he was our consultant. And he called me with another man he was working with and said, We are really struggling. This man bought a new allotment, and all of a sudden his local Forest Service office said, you have to be off your old allotment by July 15th. No reason given, average year, just you have to be off. He hadn't even grazed all of his pastures. And he said, Heather, do you know who to reach out to on this? And I said, well, I would suggest you send this to the USDA Lawfare portal. I would be happy to reach out to some people that I have met and ask them if they could please expedite it, because they were saying his cattle had to be off by July 15th. And this was about July 7th. So by the next day, they had sent that up the Lawfare portal, and I reached out to some of the attorneys that I've met at USDA, and that was at 9 in the morning, and by 5:20 that evening, that man had an email saying, your cattle don't need to be off. I don't remember if it was the regional forester, but here's who you need to talk to. But we want to reiterate that your cattle don't need to be off, and we're going to get this figured out on your behalf. So I do want to point out that as frustrating as some of these things are, there is some positive change occurring, and you could hear it in that man's voice when we talked to him the first time, and he thought he had 10 days to figure out what to do with his life. He had to sell them. He had nowhere to go with them. And then within one day, they got that stopped, and they got the right people within that agency to work with him to ensure that that things proceeded in an appropriate manner. So there are some really good things that are happening, and I do want to make sure to highlight that there are hardworking people that are trying to fix this stuff. But it is also our job as the citizen to ensure that they know what needs fixed. Do you have anything to add? I think we might have a few minutes for questions if anybody has any. Yeah, the bill we submitted was our attorney fees, the loss of production on the pivot, the cost we incurred to replace the feed we would have raised on it, our miscellaneous fees like our mileage to and from our attorneys, all the rubber components on the pivot dried out from non-use for almost 2 years. And then the last item, and this was the hardest one, was everybody that I spoke to, some representative staff, some attorneys, they all said that there should be something in there for your damages, for missing a year of your kid's school when it was, all said and done. And so that was the last line item on there, was that damages to our family. So they were all literal costs except for the last one. Yep. And if there aren't any more questions, then we're going to switch gears, because Chief Schultz has spoken primarily with Charles about something else, and we thought this would be a great opportunity to make people aware of that.
So, here a month and a half ago or so, the PLC held a meeting here in Rapid City, and I think they had 20 of them throughout the West, where they were, the BLM and the Forest Service were both in these meetings, and they wanted input from the public. And we had heard Chief Schultz last year at the A&G meeting was interested in trying to get a lot of the direct permittees into associations, which this area right in here in western South Dakota along the Cheyenne River, there's a lot of direct permittees. So we deal directly with the Forest Service. So there at that meeting that day here in Rapid, I got the opportunity to talk to Tom, and he wanted, he still has that as a vision to pull a lot of the direct permittees in, and his reasoning was there would be another layer of cushion between the actual user and the Forest Service, and it'd be a board of directors, and so there's been a group of us trying to get that moving forward, and Tom is behind us. He's asked for a few of us to start the ball rolling on trying to get as many direct permittees that we can to come to meetings and get educated and start the process of putting together associations to try to get this area together.
Well, and I would just add that Chief Schultz was very open to input from the landowner. And he said, most likely the U.S. Forest Service is going this way, but he would encourage all of you to he is happy to work with the landowners to make this as user friendly for us as possible. Is that not how you took that as well? Yeah.
So in the upcoming months here, we hope to get the deal going on that and get this taken care of. Well, he's got 2 years left in this administration, and there's a lot of favoritism from the producers out there to join associations. I'm sure we'll have some that are against it, but so that's kind of JT Reckenbach. He's a federal lands guy within the stock growers. He's part of that. Very knowledgeable guy on associations. And Scott Edoff and myself and our wives, and so we're trying to spread the word to get this deal going and try to fix this issue for Tom and the Forest Service and for ourselves for the long run. So if anybody's got any ideas and parts of associations, please come forward and help us out, because we're scratching from bare dirt, so to speak, here, and we'll answer any more questions anybody has it. If not, we'll be around afterwards, and we just thank you all for listening again.
And for the support for the last 2 years. We sincerely appreciate it.
I don't want you going anywhere. Okay, I don't know. A lot of people don't care to know. The South Dakota stock growers, back in about 2019, I think Gary Deering was the president, and I think he could probably get that date right on. We applied for what we call an NRCS grant. And that grant process writing is a pain, because I did it when it came due. And we have been able, we had $400 and some thousand that we could use in 3 years' time. But it had to be used with NRCS related issues, topics. So part of our convention that you get to attend, we comp booths to the NRCS and soil health, and they can bring their messages to us, to our membership. So I got to looking, and we had some for travel and for advocacy. So I approached my board. They say if you don't use the money, you lose the money. And it was sitting in this own little, I call it buckets. I tell the guys we have a bucket for this and a bucket for that. We never travel anywhere. We never do anything. We found an opportunity, and we are helping the Maudes with our NRCS grant money. We were presenting them $3,500 today for their efforts and their continuation. And I need to add, Charles joined our board last year after the retirement or resignation of a board member. And if you're in his district, he is up for election tomorrow. So I'm not being political, but he is a very good advocate for us, and we have direct lines into Washington, D.C. because of this family. So thank you. And if we can get, Tom, would you like to come up and help present this?